Matt Stone joined by Dan I. We're going to give you the Laker recap of the whole entire season. Oswego losing today to Adrian 5-4. Their season comes to an end in the NCAA quarterfinal round against the Bulldogs. You know, a team that had made the Frozen Four many, many years in a row. That streak comes to an end. First, let's talk about the Adrian game, a 5-4 loss.
It's really easy to look at this season and say that it's a failure because you didn't get the goal that where you were last year. 5 consecutive Frozen Fours. It's tough. Today's game, this was the best opponent they've played all year. This is the best team that they are going to face. It clearly was. You saw it from beginning to end. They played the better game, Adrian did, but Oswego was able to hang around, and the way that they do, they were able to be scrappy, get goals where they needed them the most, and when it came down to the very end, the end of the second period is what really the straw that broke the camel's back.
Go kind of back into the beginning of the season. Going way back to the beginning, the 5-3 win over Team USA kind of opened our eyes that this team was going to be a force in conference play. Them and Plattsburgh did battle for much of the year. And, you know, conference tournament did well against Nazareth and Hobart, a team that they would end up seeing in the NCAA tournament. But let's start to go towards the end of the season. A 2-1 loss against Geneseo in the middle of the year, and then the whiteout game, a 3-3 tie for the consecutive year in a row. And it seemed as though that was the game that kind of would tell the tale for this team down the stretch. It really was I wouldn't say a launching point, but it was the trademark of the season where either it went wrong or right.
Yeah, 6-1-3 over their last 10 games, including tonight's loss.
A little bit of good and bad.
It's good, but when you look at a team like Adrian, that now they're rolling. They've won 12 in a row. They're just undeniably, Adrian was the better team in this one, and Oswego had its struggles. This is not the same team we've seen throughout the season. They had their struggles for the whiteout game without Bobby Gertzakis in there, and same thing, when you lose defensive pieces, that's when things start to fall apart for you. Things don't work. Steven Johnson couldn't lift his arm above his shoulder. They had all sorts of issues defensively and offensively. The injury bug really bit the Lakers hard this year. You have Joey Davies go down in the first game of the year after scoring 2 goals against Team USA in that first game. You have John Jackson come in as a fresh new talent, second half of the year. He gets hurt. He goes down. So many points in this season where you looked at guys that could have been role players, difference makers in games, and they're out because of injury. And at the end of the year, you go with a lineup that's still solid, top to bottom. They still were able to roll 4 lines, but there was just that little bit of oomph, that little bit of effort that was missing that you felt that they could have had. And at the end of the year, it really started to show.
And going towards the end of the year, the Potsdam game. And in my opinion, this is where, you know, this loss at Adrian, it goes back to that. A loss on senior night to Potsdam ends up being a road game in Plattsburgh and SUNYAC championship. They lose that one. Now all of a sudden they're going on the road in the NCAA tournament. What went wrong on senior night against the Potsdam team that, you know, clearly was not an NCAA tournament caliber squad?
They came out flat, and you had the difference was John Hall came ready to play as a goaltender, and he had a very different set of skills as Brady Rouleau does for Plattsburgh. You can beat Brady Rouleau glove side. You cannot beat John Hall glove side. And they tried to test it, and they pounded that spot, and John Hall stood up to him and made the saves. And an empty net goal at the end to make it 4-2. It was really a 3-2 game when you think about it. But they just came out flat, and they have a tendency to do that on senior weekend. There's so much emotion into it as well. And that was really the tipping point. At that point, you just look at all of the what-ifs. The scenario changes so greatly. If they had managed to beat Plattsburgh in the SUNYAC championship, if it was in Oswego, if they had managed to avoid the first-round game, get a quarterfinal tonight at home, how much different this could be. Granted, you're still looking at matching up. If you want to put them in Plattsburgh's shoes, you'd still be matching up with Adrian next weekend, but at least you're there. You're back there again. And I think there's a lot of what-ifs for this team. For the seniors, they left it all on the table. They put everything they had out there, and you could see it. You could see the grit from this team, from the leaders, from the captains, top to bottom. They were in it. For the young guys, you kind of got to go back to the drawing table. You saw the emergence of Sean Hulshoff this year as a scoring threat, but you also saw the fallback with Matt Galati and Alex Botten. They struggled towards the end of the year, got it together. Galati with emphatic presence in the past 2 games. But they kind of got to go back to the drawing board a little bit and look at what they want to do.
Lakers season comes to a close here in Adrian. No Frozen Four for the Lakers this year. Your final thoughts on a up and down season for this prolific Oswego team who we're used to seeing, you know, playing in the Final Four.
Well, it was interesting to see right from the very beginning. I was in Buff State on Halloween, the very first game of the season, down 3-0, fall behind way early, managed to come back, win 4-3, and you knew right then that was the kind of season you were going to have. You go up, you go down, and they were trying to ride it out all season long. Eventually, you come up short against a superior opponent. It happens, but you go back to the drawing board. Next year, you come right back. You do better. You try to chase after it.
Should be interesting next year. Unfortunately,
Not
me
for
and you
us.
will not be
Not for
a part
us.
of it. Graduation is on the horizon. For Dan and I, Matt Stone, been watching a presentation of WTOP-10 Sports.